Our last video of this unit, video 7, is going to cover squares and trapezoids. We're going to get our last two shapes figured out, all the properties that we need to know. I think we got 3 example questions, and then we'll get moved on to the mastery checks and the practice and the mastery check. So the key thing here, property of a square. A square has all properties of a rhombus, rectangle, and parallelogram. So the square has everything. All right, squares got opposite sides congruent, opposite sides parallel, angles congruent, 90-degree angles, perpendicular bisectors, all those different things. All right, we're going to go through 2 questions here, hopefully help kind of show you all the different properties that it has, how we can use some of them to answer some questions. So first thing, ut is x plus 30. So I want to plug in here, x plus 30. Ts is 4x. Put the ts in. What is the value of x? Then find the perimeter RSTU. So if this is a square, probably should have wrote that this is a square, then we know that all 4 of these sides are congruent. So if these 2 things are congruent, we want to set them equal to each other, right? We can solve from here. Minus x, 30 equals 3x, x equals 10. So that's the first part. It's the value of x. And then the perimeter. Again, we talked about the perimeter in the last video. If one side, or if this is 10x, right, first we need to plug in 10 to find the length of these sides. They all happen to be 40. And the perimeter is, if we put all 4 of these together, we're going to add up 40 plus 40 plus 40 plus 40. Or since they're all the same, we can multiply by 4, but we're going to get 160. That would be the perimeter. All right. So again, property you need to know about this one, the square, all sides are congruent, set things equal to each other, and then plug it back in, find your perimeter. All right. Example 2. What is the perimeter of a square with a diagonal of 8 feet? So again, talking about a square. One thing that we know about the square is that all 4 sides are the same. This one throws in a diagonal. We only need 1. We don't have to draw the other one in because it doesn't say anything about them intersecting or bisecting. So that's 8. Well, we know if we need the perimeter, we need the length of a side. And in that square, all 4 of these sides are the same. So one of the other properties we're going to use here is that this is a right angle because the square has all the properties of a rectangle, which tells us that we have a right angle. And what we're going to use is we're going to use Pythagorean theorem from this right triangle. So we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You know I always fill in my hypotenuse first. Now with this one, we do have a little algebra to do. 8 squared is 64. X squared plus x squared. That's going to be 2x squared. So we got to divide by 2. X squared equals 32. Square root both sides. I'm going to round here. I'm going to round to 5.7. Now again, that's great. That's the length of one side, but now we need the perimeter, right? So if we're going to do the perimeter, it's going to be 5.7 times 4 sides. Since they are all the same, we are going to get 22.8 as our final answer. All right, so those are some of the questions that you might see about a square. The more important ones are going to be those multiple choice questions that we've been going over in class, memorizing the properties. It's really, really important to just kind of know all those properties and have them memorized. All right, our next shape we have to go through a little bit more. So properties of a trapezoid, opposite sides are parallel. So the big difference here with a trapezoid is only one of these pairs of sides are parallel, not both. If we had both pairs of sides parallel, we'd be looking at a parallelogram. All right, and then same side angles are supplementary. So same side. So the key thing, what it means by same side on this, is if you think about these 2 things as parallel lines, right? It's going to be that these 2 angles add up to 180, and these 2 angles add up to 180. Right? That's the important thing with a trapezoid. We also do have an isosceles trapezoid, one pair of sides parallel and the other pair of sides. So it's kind of like a isosceles triangle. The other pair of sides are congruent. So if these are parallel, these are congruent. Right? Again, the isosceles trapezoid has these two properties, but it has these extra two. And it says that base angles are congruent, which is just like our isosceles triangle. It's going to mean that C is the same as D, and A is the same as B. All right, so those are our sets of properties for our trapezoid and our isosceles trapezoid. All right, we're going to do one question on this. I tried to make this video a little shorter, even though it had both sets of shapes in it. We'll go over this some more in class. We'll talk about the different properties and how we can kind of use all of them together. So in the diagram below of trapezoid ABCD, AB is parallel to DC. So this side is parallel to this side. Then it says AD is congruent to BC. Well, since I have a pair of parallel sides and a pair of congruent sides, I know that this is isosceles trapezoid. And we're going to be able to use some of those properties. All right. The first one I'm going to use, I'm going to erase some of this so I have a little bit more room to write, is that the base angles are congruent. So it's asking me for angle D. Well, I know in an isosceles trapezoid that angle C, or these two base angles here, are the same. So I know that those are both 3x minus 15. All right. These are base angles. Then I can go back to my original trapezoid and say same side angles are supplementary. So what I can do with these same side angles is I can add them up and set them equal to 180. So 4x plus 20 plus 3x minus 15 equals 180. 4x and 3x make 7x. A plus 20 and a minus 15 make plus 5. We're going to subtract 5 from both sides. 7x equals 175. Divide the 7. X equals 25. Again, unfortunately, that's not my final answer. It does say what is the measure of angle D. So I have to make sure I take this 25, plug it back in for X. 3 times 25 minus 15. And that is going to be 60 degrees. That's going to be my final answer here. All right, so we added 2 new shapes, 3 new shapes really. The square, I always tell people, is the easiest shape but the hardest shape at the same time. It's the hardest shape because it has the most properties. But if you have the parallelogram, the rectangle, and the rhombus memorized, then the square is the easiest one because it's just all those put together. Our trapezoids are a little different. They have a little less properties, but memorize your properties, go through these practice questions, get ready for your mastery check, and we'll kind of put it all together in class.